Hi everyone, we're here today to talk to you about recruitment going into 2025 and adapting to the recent changes from the autumn announcement with new wage laws and employment rights. With rises to minimum wage, with the new employment rights that are set to come in and increased national insurance, the landscape is changing fast and we need to know our facts to get ahead of the game. Debbie and I are here to talk about those numbers. If we don't know the numbers, we don't know where to start, and how this can impact and will impact our recruitment so we can be prepared.
Definitely. So Amy, why don't you introduce yourself?
So I'm Amy Gilmore, one of the directors at Leisure Recruitment. We are a leading specialist agency that's been operating for over 20 years. We service all permanent positions and we are the only leisure specialist agency that provide cover for businesses when they need it. So in our temp workforce, we directly hire a large number of employees. So the employment laws and costs are super important to us, as well as the leisure businesses that we recruit for.
So I'm Debbie Hancock. I am the business money coach. I help businesses and their employees through financial strategy and money mindset, helping them to create more profit and a happy work environment. So looking at these changes is really important to me and my clients because they're going to impact profitability unless you make changes. So Amy, do you want to start today with the status of the recruitment?
So to get started, it sounded like it's going to be super heavy, but we will try.
We'll try and make it not too scary.
Yeah. So I always think a good place to start is the current status of the recruitment market. So we've been saying it a while, but I still feel like it is a candidate-led market. And that is really because since that word COVID, it's still due to certainty around the economy and the rising cost of living. It's such a big impact on everybody's day-to-day life that's had a real knock-on effect on their approach to employment and the way people used to move around a lot more freely. Candidates are hesitant to leave stable roles. And when we think about the leisure industry and health and fitness industry, it's quite difficult to get that real compelling role come in or offer, like, for example, a £10,000 pay rise. It doesn't really happen in health and fitness. Even for a promotion, it's unlikely that they're going to achieve something as enticing as that. So what that has now meant, I think, is that the market is quite static, and a stat is that actually within the industry 70% of the workforce is static, so only 30% of the market is actively looking for new employment. Another key point I think we have to talk about from the recruitment perspective is that we are facing a higher number of job rejections. And that is because candidates are really analysing their position and how they feel about working somewhere. And again, unless it's something quite enticing, they're more comfortable to sit tight. So for that reason, even if they've entered the recruitment process, we're having higher number of job rejections than before because they're going into the process and thinking, I'd rather sit tight, let alone the fact that a current employer, it happens, could counter offer, and that could be enough to make them stay if, again, the opportunity wasn't of a greater value enough to offset that. So will this change? I think candidates in operational positions, which makes up a huge amount of our workforce within health and fitness, I actually think it probably won't change. They have experienced quite a significant pay rise over the last couple of years due to national minimum wage. So with minimum wage now confirmed for 2025, again, they're going to see a significant pay rise. So why would they move for a similar salary, I suppose, when they're getting a bit of an increase already? And, you know, arguably, of course, it's needed. But Debbie, it'd be great if perhaps you could run us through what those numbers look like.
Of course. So with national minimum wage for over 21s increasing by 6.7%, so 77p to £12.21, you can see why people wouldn't move. So you're saying 70% of the recruitment market is static. We've seen cost of living problems, like at the moment with high rising costs. So are you going to risk moving for something that's not there's no real benefit. If you're already getting a 6.7% increase where you are,
Yeah.
why are you then going to shift and actually open yourself up to the risk of moving jobs and potentially not liking that job? You're getting the pay rise you want, you might as well stay put. There's been a substantial 16.3% jump for 18 to 20-year-olds to £10 an hour.
Yeah, really big jump.
I remember being that age and getting £5.50 an hour as a lifeguard, so... But that was quite a few years ago.
That wasn't not too long ago.
18% increase for 16 to 17-year-olds and apprentices to £7.55. So if you're a full-time employee, 21 plus, you're seeing an annual increase of over £1,600 a year. If you're not going to see that kind of benefit by moving, or more than that, should we say, there's not real much benefit to moving, giving up your secure employment, maybe going into a culture you don't like.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I guess what our hands may be forced, and a lot of businesses that I work with in the industry pay a certain hourly rate per role, but actually something that we may be forced to do is actually review as to whether or not we do need to pay more in line with the age categories to be able to just claw a little bit back. It's not something I think that's been preferred for a lot of businesses, but it's certainly an option that people could look to do.
Yeah, because it's important. This is going to affect your profitability. You're thinking that £1,600 is just for one full-time employee.
Yeah.
If you've got 10, 20, 30 employees, that cost is massively magnified. And if you've got a small profit anyway, due to rise in gas and electricity costs over the last few years, the change in rates that is coming, then this salary change as well.
Yeah.
You've got to really look at your business and how it's operating going forward. And of course, we're not talking about the moral side of these increases in minimum wage. We're purely talking about what are the financial impacts on your business and what's the impact on the recruitment process.
Yeah, 100%. So I think with those facts that Debbie has said, it's coming, it's confirmed. With that in mind, a benefit to business owners and organisations is that actually if the candidates aren't feeling too compelled to move, that's obviously a real positive. But then what we of course need to look at is how we are retaining our staff. Why do they want to stay, working for you? So what will be absolutely key here, again as well for efficiency within the business, is that we look to utilise the skill set that we do have to max out across the business. So are there any key characteristics of a team member, any real skills that sit slightly out of their job title that actually you can utilise? For example, you might have quite a techie fitness instructor. Well, instead of getting him to assist with cleaning tasks in addition to his gym duties, you could get him to support on things like systems, process, social media, something actually that you may really enjoy and add a little bit to job satisfaction and fulfillment, whereas somebody else in the business might be quite process orientated and might like to look more down the health and safety route. So again, hopefully covering a gap in the business so you can kind of keep a hold on that head count whilst adding to that learning and development of your team members. Learning and development is actually fast becoming one of the top factors of importance. Like Debbie, when you first applied for jobs, what would you look at?
The salary,
job title,
where I was going to live, because I definitely moved around for my jobs and stuff. I wouldn't have been looking at, social media wasn't such a thing back in our day. I wouldn't have been.
You're making it sound really old. But I completely agree. Job, salary and title, certainly with the top two. Now, research has shown that actually candidates are wanting to understand, and not just candidates on application, but team members, their learning and development opportunities are really, really important to them, and it's all part of why they want to invest their time and their energy into working within your company. So, okay, for smaller businesses, there might not be a big L&D program, budget. But there's lots of training providers and funding out there, or even on, unique to each individual, they can still have a learning and development plan, pathway that you could look to implement that will also in turn help support the wider business.
That's actually reminded me, one of my clients is doing a university course at the moment, and I can't remember the criteria behind it, but it's something like having 5 employees, a certain level of income, You can go on this university course for free, and it teaches you all about business. So it's a really good opportunity for businesses to offer something to their employees, either free, depending on the council, or at a really low price.
Perfect. It's free. So that is definitely something to look at. And I say it's amazing what funding is available out there and initiatives. You think it would only be for certain categories of people, for example, maybe that weren't working or currently unemployed, but that isn't the case. You can tap into these funding and initiatives out there. So retention, super key, but we could talk about that all day long. So we've talked about minimum wage. I think to bring it back to the key points within the budget announcement and getting ready for April the 1st, we now have to talk about national insurance. So Debbie, I think you're probably best placed to take the lead on this with the key points that we need to be aware of.
So employers' national insurance is going up from 13.8% to 15%. But that's not really the biggest change. The biggest change is that the threshold has dropped where you need to start paying employers' national insurance from £9,100 down to £5,000. So suddenly you're dragging loads of employees into that national insurance bucket that weren't there before. And not only that, you think if the national minimum wage is increasing, that's also going to drag more people into it. So suddenly you're seeing a huge increase in employer costs. There has been an increase in the employment allowance, which has gone from £5,000 to £10,500. So what this can mean, what I've seen through some of my clients, is around the 10 to 12 employee mark, depending on the age of the employees and the rate of pay. Actually, they're zeroing out, so there's no impact. But if you're paying higher salaries or you've got more employees than that, you will going to start seeing a substantial increase in your national insurance costs. That again is going to impact your profitability and the viability of the business. So it's really important that you're looking at your data and looking at your numbers and doing these calculations.
So minimum wage has gone up, so we're getting to the threshold quicker.
Yep.
And then the threshold, then the percentage itself has increased from 13.8 to 15. So we've been double whammied.
Yep.
But then, hold on, we got thrown a bit of a lifeline that the threshold went up, which will be a huge help.
The employment allowance,
The employment allowance, thank you. This is why Debbie's the money expert. So that will be a really big help to smaller businesses. And what do you think that number looks like in terms of number of employees of which actually will, have a positive impact from this versus that business size? I guess it's very small businesses versus medium and big that simply will face the increased costs.
Yeah, so it's around the 10 employee mark where it starts to impact them. Okay. And I think the chance that they've done that in a purposeful way to try and sort of assist the really small businesses.
I see.
But to be honest, if you've got 12, 14, you're not that big, and you will start seeing an impact in the national insurance costs, and it is about doing the calculations. So with my clients, we've gone through every employee and actually individually calculated the impact.
Yeah.
But she has some of my clients have employees who are below the threshold of having to pay employer national insurance.
So on that, I think a key point for us within the leisure industry, the fitness industry, is that currently we're barely paying any E&I on our part-timers, 16 hours, sort of 2.5 days a week or less. But actually, we will now be paying E&I on people basically working over one shift. So it's a big change there for it. Okay, so we've talked about minimum wage, we've talked about national insurance. The third point that we'd like to talk about today, because otherwise, this is going to be a really long recording, is the Employment Rights Bill. So the Employment Rights Bill is set to come in 2026. It's not 100% confirmed.
No, it's not confirmed yet.
But from what everybody's saying, it's looking very, very likely. So we just kind of want to touch on the points that I guess we need to be aware of to get ahead of the game. Day one employment rights is probably the biggest kind of factor that comes to mind when I think of the new Employment Rights Bill. It's going to give workers day one rights around things like statutory sick pay, maternity, paternity, unfair dismissal, which currently sits at the 2-year mark, but that's coming down to actually day one after probation though, which is what I've learned from Debbie today.
So you can see, like you were saying, the market's stagnant. Surely this is going to stagnate the market more in terms of employers are going to want to hold on to those employees.
Well, of course, because then, they're existing employees. Obviously, what it could throw up is a scenario like a brand new employee comes in, works one day, and then goes sick. And, their job is protected and they are entitled to that support of statutory sick pay, which is, of course, great for employees and that level of support. There are positives there, but from a business perspective, it's something that will have to be built into the recruitment and retention strategy.
So another thing that's coming up in it is the 0-hour contracts.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the leisure industry does have people on 0-hour contracts at the moment. And the change means that over a 12-week period, they're going to have to guarantee them a number of hours.
Yeah.
So you can't just chop and change quite so much. Again, with all these changes, you can see the incentive for employees, but it just makes it a slightly harder playing ground for the employers. And you need reasonable notice over change of shifts.
Yeah.
And you have to be paid for cancelled shift if they're cancelled within a certain amount of time. So there is a real implication to how flexible you can be as a business and impacting your operation, the operational side of your business, because you can't suddenly just chop and change if classes get cancelled or there's not enough people booked on.
No, and what you're talking about, is really, really prominent within the leisure industry, that flexible way of working, especially with businesses that are seasonal, of course, operate on peak trading. Having that bank of casual staff is a way a lot of business operate. And even like you made the point that you won't be able to just cancel down shifts. Those shifts must stand or would remain payable to the team member. So that will really impact the way businesses need to put their rotas together. And like Debbie said, I think they'll really be looking more at those longer standing and contracted staff. So it's just a proposal at the moment, but our advice in these little snippets of information is, if you're not 100% sure, is then go and seek further advice from an expert and get those facts ready for those changes that are coming.
So finally, we wanted to talk about the mindset around these things, because we can talk about the facts and numbers, but there's always a mindset element. So when you're looking at your business, cost is only one part of it. Income, revenue, turnover, whichever word you wish to use, is the other side of it. So when you're looking at your business as a whole and the financial impact of these, have you considered your pricing? I know it's a really touchy subject within the industry, but there is leeway for increasing prices. And when I talk about increasing prices, yes, you may lose members, yes, you may lose customers, but it's understanding, if you to increase your price by £2, what's the impact on your business? So one of my clients is about 20 grand a year. And what's the impact if 10 of those recurring clients leave? Actually, you're still going to be massively better off. Have you looked at your merchandise prices? Have you looked at your PT prices? Have you looked at the cost increase? So we all know that gas and electricity has gone a bit crazy within the industry. Have you looked at changing providers, your insurance costs, your mobile phone costs? Literally every small cost in your business, have a look at it, review it, and question, is this benefiting your business? Is it not? Because the point is, within the fitness industry, there's very small profit margins.
Yeah.
And so these increases are going to, along with rates changes, let's not forget that they change the rates as well, this is going to impact your profit on your business and make it smaller and smaller. So it's really important.
The prices, they have to go up. And I think business owners, you know, they get super scared about putting their prices up because they want to protect their customers. They don't want to do it. But we are at a point that we have to. And, you know, there's rationale for that. And if you don't, as Debbie said, the profit margin, of course, it's just decreasing. Debbie, you were telling me earlier about some really interesting benefits as well that we can do for our team members. We can't always do the big juicy bonuses, especially within the leisure industry, let's be honest. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned some really interesting points that probably is feasible for us. Trivial benefits, do you call them?
Yeah, so as long as they're not regular and predictable and they're not related to performance, you can do small things like trivial benefits, which is up to £50, including VAT, not £50 and a penny, won't be considered. But you could do like bring in donuts or something equally healthy, protein bars on a Friday. Not every Friday, but randomly you could give an employee a voucher up to that amount for, say, the supermarket they shop in or Amazon. There's sort of things you can do that don't put extra tax on the employee and are tax deductible for your business, therefore reducing corporation tax. Dependent on the type of employee, like the role, you could give them a mobile phone from your limited company, again not taxable on the employee and tax deductible for you. There's sort of small ways of showing the employee that you respect them and like their loyalty without actually increasing tax on either of you. In fact, you're decreasing your tax.
Do you know what? It's such a good point, and those little things can go such a long way. And in terms of the mindset around recruitment and retention, that plays such a big part in it around actually how else can we create that enticing employer brand. We are where we are with what we can pay. There's obviously a ceiling point to that, but are there things within our control that we can also utilise to be more tax efficient as well? So, you know, you've talked about your sort of phones, rewards, recognition. We're told time and time again that reward and recognition doesn't have to be big things of a high monetary value. Actually, what people want is direct praise. Mm-hmm. They want to know and be told that they're doing a good job. They want those little things. I mean, our team, to be honest, they want a bottle of booze. I've tried plants, we've tried massages, we have tried healthier options, but it still comes back to a bottle of fizz, a bottle of booze, but whatever works for your team. And it's just a gesture. It's that it's being acknowledged and their work is being acknowledged. So reward and recognition, you know, plays a huge part both on the money side and obviously in retaining and you know, how your staff feel about working for your business. So
one you mentioned to me, actually, just before you forget, is the birthday.
Of course, yeah. So we actually stole this. This is a great thing about being a recruiter and working with so many different businesses and operators. We say, great, tell us about the job, tell us, you know, to put an exciting advert together and to tell candidates about the job. We say, what do you offer in your business? Anything that is unique. And a few years ago, I was chatting to a number of employees that work for a company. I said, what do you love about working for this company? And they said, I'll get my birthday off. Now, I know this company does some really incredible things with all the things that we've talked about, with succession planning, with training, with development, with internal promotion. But they wanted to tell me that they got their birthday off. And I just thought that's really interesting. That's the first thing that came to their mind. So I stole it and we have it at For Leisure. And again, everybody absolutely loves it.
It's like a little birthday treat, isn't it?
It's a treat. It's something personal that's to them. They're not using their allocated annual leave. And look, it doesn't cost the business. Let's be honest. We can cover for that one day. So that's something that was within our control that we introduced. I'm pleased that you reminded me of it. So, I mean, really around this enticing employer brand piece is to sit back and think, why do my team members want to work for us? what are those reasons? And again, it's around the culture that you have within the business. You know, Gen Z, younger people younger than us, there's been a real shift towards their mindset and wanting to invest their time and energy into an employer that is going to support them. So it is a two-way process, and if they don't feel like the value is there, then they're not going to stay. So all these things that you can do outside of just the flat pay rate, it's just got a review of what is within your control.
Yeah, so I guess we kind of have to accept that the pay is the pay.
Yeah.
National insurance is changing, rates are changing, there's nothing we can do about that. So as a business owner, it's really looking at maybe what costs you can change. So for one of my clients, actually, we're looking at bringing an outsourced person onto the employment books. So actually, we're not looking to reduce headcount, we're actually looking to increase headcount, because employing that person directly would be cheaper than outsourcing it. And that kind of fits in with what you were saying about, but could you take someone who is a fitness instructor and could they do your marketing for you?
Yeah.
What can you do to actually bring it in-house and manage it in a different way and reduce your costs? So we kind of need to wrap this up because we've gone over the time we said we were to do, but it's really interesting. It's like looking at your business as a whole, collecting the data, looking at your employment contracts. You know, we're in February now, so I think these changes are coming in April. So what do you need to do now to get ready for April? Seek expert advice and speak to you guys around the recruitment process.
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, a lot of businesses are actually looking at what other platforms and methods can be utilised to pay their staff, and we're seeing a shift that people are looking to potentially outsource the employment and payroll of their team members to mitigate all this liability that we've just talked about. It's a solution, but as Debbie said, it's about being ahead of the curve, knowing what the facts are so you can get that strategy in place. Once you know what the strategy is, it's of course then the comms timeline to both your team members first and foremost, to your customers as well, so they know exactly what's coming, obviously bearing in mind that we need to serve notice on a lot of these points.
Yeah, exactly.
But every point that we've talked about could have been its own session in itself. So I love talking about money, I love talking about the industry and recruitment. So Debbie, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And if you have any further questions, if you've made it through to the end and are still watching this, then please reach out to both of us at any time.
Thank you. Hope you have a good day.
Bye-bye.